This customer warmed up, and then you coming for the kill.
The kill.
Yes?
Hello, young lady. We're selling chocolate.
High level fights.
Is your mother home?
Mom!
What's all that yelling? You just can't wait for me to die, can you?
They're selling
High level fights.
Chocolate?
Yeah!
What are they selling?
High level fights.
Average Josh Podcast. Subscribe. Alright, so Devin the Dream Haney just had a pretty magnificent fight. I would probably say it's magnificent for his standards, especially compared to the last fight that he had with George Kambosos, where George Kambosos took more risk. He was doing this type of weird herky-jerky switching type of thing. He was really doing like his best impression of like Vasyl Lomachenko in the beginning of the fight, to just try to switch it up and change angles and do something different. I'll have to give him credit for, you know, trying to be unique, selling out, and really at least throwing all caution to the wind, and at least, you know, taking risks to try to win the fight. But at the end of the day, Devin Haney got his timing down pretty quickly. He was able to predict him pretty quickly. He was able to establish his jab like he did in the last fight, but he was also able to throw that right hand out more and really start to land and hit Kambosos and really start to bloody him up, which I honestly didn't really cover that fight in the beginning or make a prediction video of that fight, just because I knew this was exactly what was going to happen, because George Kambosos, he just had to take his shot. You know, I'm glad that he had enough courage as a man to go ahead and take that shot, and I respect him for doing so, but I kind of knew that this was kind of where it was going. And I even have this Facebook post right here that you can see. I'll pause it. See, where I basically said exactly how the fight was going to go, not because I'm some freaking genius mastermind, but it was just obvious that that was how the fight was going to go. But I want to talk about something else. It was the condition that Devin Haney was in during the weigh-in. Now, you saw Devin Haney during his previous bout with George Kambosos, where he came in the weigh-in and he made weight and he looked healthy. You know, he was talking about how he hired a nutritionist, how he was doing everything the right way, and how he was able to adequately lose the weight without being weight drained or anything too bad. But then when you see him in this one, it's literally night and day, bruh. Devin Haney came out there looking like a dried up black raisin, bruh. He looked like that thing. Have you ever seen SpongeBob? You know, episode where SpongeBob was running around selling chocolate, and he meets that old woman, and she's like, "What are you selling?" "He's selling chocolate, Mom." "You're selling chocolate?" Yeah, that's literally what Devin Haney looked like, bruh. And I've seen other people have like these massive weight cuts. You saw Chris Bank Jr. Having that weight cut to fight Conor Ben in that fight that didn't end up happening. He looked pretty sunken in. You see googly-eyed Errol Spence, that googly-eyed motherfucker looking like a background character for freaking Thriller, talking about coming in looking all weight drained and sick and stuff during his fights. And it just goes to show you, like, these high level boxers, because they want to fit down in those weight classes, because they want to defend their belts, will usually go to freaking crazy extremes to make that weight. Crazy extremes. Not as extreme as like cheating and like some people do, and taking diuretics like Oscar Valdez, but still some pretty extremes, you know. Coming in there basically looking like a freaking skeleton, looking like Halloween came early or something, man. And if you take a look at like Devin Haney in his normal weight, or like Errol Spence Jr. in his normal weight versus when he comes into there, it's like night and day. He literally goes from looking like a freaking dried up raisin zombie, freaking Walking Dead looking cast member, to looking like someone who, you know, just looking like a normal dude, the type of dude you see at freaking LA Fitness playing basketball or something. But the thing that everybody wants to talk about is that, what is Devin Haney going to do next? Because we all know about not the George Kambosos, but we all know about the Vasyl Lomachenko situation, where Vasyl Lomachenko essentially was offered or requested, I'm not really 100% sure what happened, to become franchise champion, and he used that as a way to elevate himself above to where he would not necessarily have to fight Devin Haney, and where he was able to fight Teofimo Lopez for undisputed without having to face his mandatory Devin Haney, which honestly seemed like a very dangerous mandatory without really much of a financial incentive, without really much of a legacy incentive since Devin Haney was so young. So financially and career-wise, I can understand why he took that chance, but that was really one of the big things that made people really start championing for Devin Haney. Because you got to understand, the young man, he's not only a great fighter, he's a young fighter, but he was also a great young fighter who was cheated out of an opportunity by boxing politics. And anyone who loves boxing hates boxing politics. You hate boxing politics. I hate boxing politics. Devin Haney hates boxing politics. Everybody hates boxing politics when you're a fan or when you're a boxer who's on the wrong end of it. Sometimes it works out for you, great, but sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on who you are, who your promoter is, who you know, and it's just one of those things where it's like you can kind of game the system and win without actually winning in the ring, which no one really respects. Devin Haney was on the wrong side of boxing politics, which essentially made him kind of like the poster child for fighters who have been cheated. And it's not just Devin Haney who's been cheated by boxing politics. You see Jamal Charlo kind of got treated the same way. You see where Stanionis, he was promised a fight with Errol Spence after the
Spence Ugas fight,
where he was promised that if he were to step aside, take the money, he was ensured that after that fight, he would get the winner of
Errol Spence versus Eugenio Ugas,
which you see that he didn't really get. So it really does suck to be on the wrong side of boxing politics. So that's kind of what really won Devin Haney his hardcore fan base. It was been an excellent fighter, but now he's an excellent fighter that people can sympathize with, that was basically cheated out of an opportunity by boxing politics. So then he goes and Vasyl Lomachenko was gonna get another shot to fight for undisputed against George Kambosos, because like I said, it's boxing politics. Vasyl Lomachenko was with Bob Arum. He's basically a young man who was cheated by boxing, who's a great fighter, who was cheated by boxing politics, and then when presented the opportunity to fight for the titles and become undisputed, he made every single concession possible to make that happen. And that was the second thing, or the third thing that people loved about Devin Haney. It was the fact that unlike so many other fighters who are willing to negotiate for years and years and years and years to fight other champions inside of their weight class, or you know, people who just straight up avoid fighters for years and years and years, Devin Haney wasn't willing to do that. He was willing to make every single concession to make the fight happen. He didn't care about being the A side. He's like, I'll be the B side. He was willing to take a rematch clause and to fight George Kambosos again inside of his home country. He was willing to sign a deal with ESPN to fight 3 times. So even if once he beat George Kambosos twice, there would be a third fight. And honestly, because after that third fight, he'll essentially be a free agent. He'll be able to sign with anyone. Bob Arum definitely has a pretty good incentive to try to get the young man beat so that he can keep those belts with Top Rank. So I have a feeling that if he can't make 135, they're probably going to force him to fight Teofimo Lopez, just because that's what I would do if I was a promoter. I'm like, yeah, if you're going to leave me anyway, or if I have suspicions that you're going to leave me, I might as well get some good big fights out of it. Because Devin Haney doesn't look like the type of guy would really want to sign like a large amount of multi-fight deals with one promoter, just because, you know, he's seen his father was in the music business enough, and he knows enough about the business of boxing to know that isn't the route he should probably go with if he wants to make as much money as possible and have the autonomy to make the fights that he actually wants to make. But that's why people like Devin Haney, because you just get this sense, unlike with a lot of the other star boxers, that he's willing to do what he has to make the big fights. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. He was in a desperate situation where he was essentially somewhat forced to do that. But unlike Teofimo Lopez, who constantly said he would never fight Devin Haney and that he was an email champion, or Vasyl Lomachenko, who said that he wouldn't fight Devin Haney because he was too young, or Ryan Garcia, who says that he has this big fight with Tank Davis and it doesn't end up happening, and this big fight with with Manny Pacquiao and it doesn't end up happening. You get the feeling that Devin Haney's kind of like at least being honest and at least going out there to try to make the fights, and he might talk down to a fighter who's talking down to him, but he never makes it seem like he doesn't want to fight anybody. You just get the feeling kind of like with David Benavidez, where it's like this young man is really actually willing to fight anybody. If you put him in the situation to get a fight, if you put him in the negotiations, you know, unlike Terrence Crawford, who's kind of hard to negotiate with, and he's notorious for that, or just other fighters who are just notoriously hard to negotiate with. Seems like Devin Haney will get it done, and that's why Devin Haney has such a strong, like crazy fan base, a fan base that's willing to just down every other fighter just to put Devin Haney up, because they want to put Devin Haney up because they see that if Devin Haney's on the top, or at least they believe that if Devin Haney's on the top, he's actually going to negotiate for big fights. But, that's all I really got to say about that. Oh, but in regards to if I think that Devin Haney's going to fight Vasyl Lomachenko, I would honestly say, given the way he looked at that weigh-in, and the fact that he keeps talking about how making 135 is really hard on his body, I fully expect him to roll the dice and to fight Lomachenko. That's what I'm expecting, just due to his character, just due to the fact that he fought so hard to get the opportunity to have the belts, just due to the fact that he knows that it's going to not necessarily look great on his legacy to have his only title defense against George Kambosos, an opponent who he was clearly better than, and just seeing the lengths that he's willing to go to not only get good fights, prove himself to like diehard boxing fans, and to like cement his legacy. He just seems like the type of man who's willing to just even weight drain, go in there with the monster, which is Vasyl Lomachenko. And honestly, if that weight drain version of him, because the weight drain version of him can look good against George Kambosos, even Devin Haney at 70-80% was going to beat George Kambosos, just because the skill gap and the speed gap and the athleticism gap, it was just too great for George Kambosos to overcome. But with Vasyl Lomachenko, I don't think an 80-70% Devin Haney has a chance of beating Vasyl Lomachenko, if I'm being honest. He's going to have to do something drastic to where he can get that weight under control. Like I said, he did look good fighting against George Kambosos, but was that because he was at his best, or was that because he was just so much better than George Kambosos just made him look good? I don't know. Only time will tell. But the one thing that I do think, I am like 60-40. I'm 60% leaning that he will take the Lomachenko fight, and I'm 40% leaning that he'll move up to 140 and take the Teofimo Lopez fight. But that's all I really have to say about that. You can leave your comments and your thoughts about it at the bottom of the video, and I'm out.